So today we're going to talk about natural processes. Uh, this one comes up a lot. It's a typical one. It's the hydrological cycle. So just have a look at it for a few moments and let's talk about what you notice here.
Oh my! It's a cycle of water in the nature.
You should pick a starting point.
Okay, so at first it's rain, then I guess water from the ocean and the surface evaporate, and then it it became clouds, and then it starts again.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. And we missed one step. What happens after the rain? You can
Infiltration?
use, yeah, yeah, that's part of it. You can use the language that's there.
So I guess it's infiltration. This is when water in the ocean or river, something like that.
It says groundwater below the surface.
Okay.
Flows into rivers, lakes, ocean. Okay, so we've got that. And what else do we have after the rain?
And then the surface runoff.
What does that mean in your own words?
When snow melts down from the mountain.
And what happens to that melted snow?
It goes into a river or whatever, like something like that.
Yep. So eventually all of this stuff kind of makes its way back into the ocean, or what else happens to it after this stage?
Evaporation or transpiration?
So both of these. So what would be kind of a logical way to group this information? Because remember, you want to group this kind of diagram into stages rather than saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And each one of those stages is going to be one of our body paragraphs. So what makes sense here in terms of grouping? Can we put those together? Maybe into two big stages?
Yes, I think when the water go up and when the water go down.
Yeah, that's a pretty easy way to do it. Don't overthink this too much. The diagram is not meant to be tricky. Just go for a really obvious way of grouping the information, because you don't want a whole bunch of teeny tiny disconnected paragraphs with like one sentence each. And then usually you don't want to necessarily put everything into one paragraph. Okay, so we're going to group it this way. One thing I want to talk about, one thing that often comes up in this kind of diagram, with the graphs for Task 1 Academic, it's pretty easy to go way over the minimum. We often go to 200, 220 words. With these kinds of natural processes, it's often a challenge to even get to 150 words. If you really wanted to, you could summarize all of this information in this diagram in a few sentences. So in this case, you have to kind of use your language skills to really extend these ideas. Include basically everything, all these little points that they give you, and you'll need to include that information in order to reach or slightly exceed the word minimum of 150 words. Okay. So I would suggest grouping it like this. Okay, so like this. So first we need the intro, then our first body paragraph is going to be the upward cycle of evaporation and transpiration, as well as condensation and cloud formation. Then the second body paragraph is going to be the downward cycle of precipitation, surface runoff, infiltration. Okay, and then you would want to point out, since it's a cycle, that it starts again. Right, and that's a nice way of ending this one off. In terms of the verb tense, this is always something that you should consider. Which verb tense makes the most sense for this one?
Simple present.
Right. And why is that?
Because it's constant process, like all in general.
Yeah, the sun rises in the east, it sets in the west. There's no time information, it's just simple present. So let's start with the context. Subject, verb, object, preposition, phrase construction. This diagram is the subject, shows as the verb, how water cycles through the environment, and then on, above, and under the surface is the preposition phrase. Now let's go on to our overview. So we don't want it to be too general. We don't want it to be too specific. Just, you can talk about the number of steps in the cycle and summarize the cycle. Okay. So how many steps are there in this cycle?
I think 3.
Well, how many distinct steps? 1,
Oh,
2,
distance.
3, 4, 5, 6.
6.
That's a very easy way to write the general overview. Okay, you can say it can be clearly seen that there are 6 steps in the hydrological cycle. And then you mention the first step and the final step. Okay, this is a formula for these kinds of process diagrams. It can be clearly seen that there are steps in the something process. And then you mention the first step and the final step. It's hard, to find the right language to describe this because it is a continuous cycle. There really is no beginning. Right? Even look at the language we're using, starting with water becoming vapor. So it's starting with a process and ending with a process, vapor becoming water, right? That's not a single thing. Interesting. Okay. Any questions, any comments so far? Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to read a model together. Don't take a picture or anything. I'll give you a link to this document later. All right. The illustration depicts how water circulates through the land, sea, and air. It can be seen that there are 6 steps in the hydrological cycle, with water changing to vapor and back again in the form of precipitation. Due to the sun's heat, water evaporates from rivers, lakes, and oceans and provides 90% of the water vapor in the atmosphere. The other 10% is supplied by transpiration, whereby moisture is carried upwards from the roots of plants and is released into the air. All of this water vapor in the atmosphere then goes through a process of condensation and forms clouds. After clouds have formed, The water is released in the form of precipitation and returns to the surface. From here, it can go in one of two ways. The first way is for snow and rain to become surface runoff, which returns to rivers, lakes, and oceans. As well, water infiltrates the land and becomes groundwater under the surface. This also flows back into the different bodies of water. At this point, the cycle starts again with water evaporating into the atmosphere. Okay, I'm just going to hide this. This is your outline.